Okay, hello, my friends. It's your friend Ghost of Cabby back. Been sick, so I've been on hiatus for a little bit, but it's currently December, year of our Lord 2025, and I decided to fight off this illness and produce a new stellar piece of content for you all to enjoy in the Christmas season. Because recently, I won't even bother naming these shows, but several shows in the Dabverse did awards for the year. And not only was I not a winner of anything, but I was not even nominated. So honor demanded that I produce something new to show the people what they're missing out on. Because where else in the Dabverse do you find such high quality, high production value, original content? No clips, no sniping, no fancy Hollywood tricks, just good old fashioned arts and crafts. Now, before we get into this chart, which is very important, which will sum up what I see the Dabbleverse's situation at this point and what the future should be, I actually made some notes this time instead of just rambling to make sure I don't forget anything. And most importantly, we will talk about her more when we get into the battle. But with Keanu, Kiki, I have to mention that a few weeks ago, I think I was watching Melton. But one of the Dabverse shows, and it showed a clip of her with no makeup on. Now, she's not ugly. She's still a fairly attractive woman. But with no makeup, I was shocked to find out that she has no lips. Everybody makes fun of Chad Zumach for having no upper lip. But Keanu, you see this? This is fake. Like, I have, nice, luscious lips, like this. But she has got, these little, old lady lips where they're just, these little wispy things. And she's very good on camera with the makeup and filters and whatnot of hiding it. But when it showed her with no makeup, you could see she has no lips. So she gets this fancy red lipstick. And now whenever I see a clip of her, I can't unsee it now. But zoom in next time you see her, and you'll see that most of the lip that you see there is just drawn onto this skin around her mouth, where it's completely fake. But the woman's got no lips. I was shocked to see that, but it's funny, and I can't unsee it now. So, sorry, that's kind of a goofy thing to talk about, but I had to say it before I forget. But congratulations to Adam Davies. If you're watching, sir, you're fantastic, because this battle to compare the current situation of Dabverse is the Battle of El Alamein from the North African campaign of the Second World War, specifically the Second Battle of Alamein. Excuse me. There are actually two, but both are important, but this one's going to focus on the Second Battle of Alamein, because once I explain things, you'll see the parallels between that real-life event and our current Dabbleverse are astounding. I think it sums up things quite well, and it'll be a good predictor of what I think is going to happen for the Dabbleverse with all of our enemies in 2026. Now, real quick, excuse me, some historical background. This was fought between the Axis forces and the Allies in World War II. I'm going to do a very abridged version of the battle, but again, American school systems are very poor. So a lot of people, unless you are old enough to see the History Channel back in the 90s when they used to show history instead of just pawn shop shows and all that shit, or when people actually watch TV instead of apps, you might remember they would show things about World War II, and you might know a little bit about this. But this was Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy versus the British Empire. And in that battle, I want you to focus, because when you look at all this, okay, at first glance, it looks like, whoa, crowded board. I had a hard time fitting everybody on here. I had to trim a lot of these heads that are reused from previous videos to make everybody fit. But when you look at this, you think, whoa, this is a big clash of the Titans. It looks pretty evenly matched because there's so many people on each side. But that is deceptive, just like a battle map in real life. Because here on the Axis side, the red represents German forces, and the green represents Italian forces. Now, again, a lot of you probably don't know that, but Italy was a major player in the Second World War, and they were on the Axis side, a strong German ally. Although not very effective in most cases militarily, they were Germany's, probably their most important European ally. But, again, if you don't know anything about World War II, I'm assuming everybody has heard the name Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox. He was the commander of the famous Afrika Korps. which is just the German units, by the way. That's the Afrika Korps. Again, people don't know this, but the entire force was the Panzer Army Africa. And you can see that it's a majority Italian forces making up the bulk. At least 60%. Of course, it would fluctuate at different times, but it was always the majority of the forces. The Afrika Korps you've heard of is just that. It is just a corps. There's 2 armored divisions, a couple mechanized infantry, and then you have a brigade here, which is Chad Zumach. And again, the 4 horsemen of the Dabverse, what I always talk about, of John, Aaron, Opie, and Chad, they represent the Germans. Then, of course, Vince the lawyer represents the 5th unit here. He's been given a big promotion in my eyes. Vince was originally more of like an ancillary character, but now he, in my opinion, is the Erwin Rommel of the Dabbleverse. Now, again, you probably heard that name before. You must know Rommel was one of Germany's best commanders. In my opinion, of course, Walter Model is probably the best, but many great commanders in the Second World War on the German side. But Rommel was a master tactician, much like Vince the lawyer is a master tactician at trolling people, especially John, and just being an asshole, which, again, like Rommel, is why he is both feared and respected by friend and foe alike. So Vince has been given a major upgrade in the Dabbleverse in my eyes. In my opinion, which, again, we illustrated in this battle, I think he is largely responsible for keeping John afloat, much how the Germans kept the Italians afloat in this campaign. Chad being the least popular, least powerful of my 4 famous Dabbleverse people is why he's only a brigade versus a division. And then John and Aaron, of course, are the 2 armored divisions because they are the main players on the side of the bad guys. Then you have all their lackeys, Ava, Gino, Keanu. Johnny Crutches is amazingly still alive. Clay Dabbler is still around. I threw in Karmic X. Now, Karmic is special. He is, if you had to have just a faction, down the middle, one side and the other side, he would be on the bad guy's side. But Karmic is not hateable like all these other people. But with the current situation of, him fighting with Pat Dixon and with Tukey and everybody else, I think it's best to put him on their side. Now, again, going to real life, where you see these Italians had to supplement the majority of the force here and were quite weak and ineffective in real life, I had to throw in some other weak people on the Axis side just to fill out all the units that existed in real life. That's why we have Stevie Lou here in support as another Italian 101st Division. If you don't know who that is, that's okay. He's really not important in the Dabbleverse. He's just a lackey of Kevin Brennan. He doesn't like Melton. He doesn't like Carl. He just is on Kevin Brennan's show sometimes, just as a yes man, that kind of thing. He's really not important, but again, I needed to fill out people, which again is why he's here. That's why I threw Karmic on this side. And then I don't like to speak ill of the dead, but that's why I brought Jackie out of retirement and put her in here. He sees the Italian 133rd Infantry Division supporting Aaron because of the rumors that he caused the breakup between her and Haley, and then there's other rumors that she has in fact moved to Minnesota and is the current SP. I don't know if that's true or not, but it wouldn't shock me if it turned out to be true. So her betrayal of all of us in the Dabbleverse, all the fans on the good side, is why I put her over here with the bad guys. And then everybody else is pretty self-explanatory. You know why Gino's over here. You know why Opie's over here, blah, blah, blah. Now, another important thing with the battle, but also with real life, is you'll notice there's just these 2 factions. You have Italians and you have Germans. And again, the majority are weak Italian forces just there to fill the ranks. On the Allied side, though, you'll notice lots of different colors. Okay, look, we got brown, we got yellow, light blue, dark blue, orange. We got everything. So, going down the British and Commonwealth forces, this represents Carl and also Patrick, because as I've said, the 2 universes have all merged into just one solid Dabbleverse where, everybody is all kind of together. There's not really separation there used to be. So they represent the British. And as I've said before, Carl is the godfather of the Dabbleverse, and he spawned a lot of babies. In the both World Wars, but we're talking about the Second World War here, Britain was able to call upon her empire, her children, to come aid her in times of war. Now, a little context to the real world, just in case you don't know this stuff, but Britain now, you see the stuff in the news, it's a very sad, depressing place. Breaks my heart to see what the UK is like now. But it really did used to be a superpower. It used to be the envy of the civilized world. It used to be phenomenal. They had one of the biggest empires, the biggest empire, depending on how you measure it, in the world. So again, Britain could call upon her vast empire, both dominions and colonies, to aid her against Germany. So when you all hear about the fall of France in 1940 and people say Britain stands alone, really when you study the war, Britain was never alone because she had vast resources at her disposal. So starting at the top, we have Dean Galloway of Perth, Australia, representing the 9th Australian Infantry Division, which, by the way, this is the most doxed man in the Dabbleverse, but it was still very hard to find a photo of him. It's not a great picture, but that was the best I could get off of the internet to add him to the board here. And then we have Haley as the 51st Highland Division. I put her there because of the red hair, so those are Scottish troops playing the bagpipes in the battlefield, all that kind of stuff. Then for the 2nd New Zealand Division, of course, we have Cardiff Electric. Now you're thinking, Kelly, why are you doing that? Cardiff is actually Canadian. Well, there's 2 reasons. One, I wanted to make sure he was on the board. Excuse me. But Canada is rivaled really by Australia as the most important British children in the Second World War. Both of these countries, punched far above their weight class in the World Wars with the men, the materials, everything they supplied. But Canada's not in this battle, but I wanted to make sure that he was represented, so I threw him in as the New Zealanders. Which that division also had a battalion of Maori troops. Maoris are like the Ooga Booga people of New Zealand. And Ramla's quoted as saying that they were the most ferocious of all Allied troops he ever faced. Then as the 1st South African Infantry Division, we have Tukey. He is represented as South Africa because South Africa, as you probably know, now again, South Africa is another country that's gone to shit, but used to be quite nice. But when the correct people were in charge over there were a lot of people of German and Dutch descent. So South Africa had lingering loyalties to the Axis in some ways, especially because of the First and Second Boer Wars that were fought before the First World War. So there was, some resentment towards the British, which is, Tukey, he has lingering feelings for Chad and Carmack and everything. So I thought that was a nice comparison. Now, the 4th Indian Division is, of course, represented by Moody. I made him here instead of the New Zealand because I thought he would be complimented to be more in touch with his heritage and whatnot. Fun fact about India. India was still a colony of Britain at the time, but I think something like 2.5 million Indians volunteered to serve in the British military during this war. So they were a huge asset in terms of manpower and resources. Then the 50th Infantry Division of Great Britain, we have Blind Mike. And also the 44th Infantry Division of Great Britain, we have Cayley. Now, the reason why I made those British is because they're, Carl's direct real-life friends. So they're the closest to having a direct connection to him. Now, going back up, we have producer Chris and, what was his name? Pat Dixon, I'm sorry. Now, Pat represents a brigade of Greek forces. In the Second World War, I think it was October 1940. But stupid Italy actually invaded Greece, being jealous of Germany's successes. I don't mean to go down the rabbit hole of World War II, but this is interesting. So they invaded Greece, like stupid Gino, causing problems with Pat, and invaded, and the smaller, poorly equipped, but very tough Greek army whipped Italy's ass, completely pushed them out of Greece, overran them like half of Albania. Germany had to come in, much like Aaron and, these other people to save Gino because he's a loser. So it's just another nice little real-life parallel. So he represents a Greek brigade, and then producer Chris represents the brigade of Free French forces. These are French legionnaires, French who escaped after the fall of France that refused to surrender and joined up with the British to fight. And then we have Shuley down here as the 7th Armored Division in reserve. These 3 are the armored divisions because, of course, they have the biggest, most powerful channels on the Allied side of the Dabbleverse. But again, like I said, Carl and Melton, much like Britain, able to call upon its empire, call their children to help them in times of crisis. So again, I think it's a very good representation of what's going on. Now, in this battle, what had happened is, like I said, this is the 2nd Battle of Alamein. In the first, in July 1942, the Axis had been on the offensive, and they had pushed the British completely out of Libya, well into Egypt. El Alamein is this tiny railroad crossing right on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, and the desert narrows to only about 40 miles at this particular point. So they're anchored on the north by the ocean, and then on the south by something known as the Qatar Depression. This isn't an exact description, but it's kind of like a Grand Canyon of Egypt type thing. It's not that exactly, but the point is it's terrain that is impassable to tanks and everything. So at this advance, the Axis and the Allied forces are compressed into, again, like 40 miles. So in July, the former commander of the British Eighth Army, a guy named Sir Claude Auchinleck, he said, "We will make a final stand here." The British threw everything they had at the Axis. The Axis were tired from advance. They had lost men, long supply lines. So they fought to a stalemate here. And the forces held for several months. In that time, Auchinleck was replaced by another general. I apologize, I forget his name, even though I've been to the guy's grave. I should remember it. But he was actually killed in a plane crash. He was shot down by the German Air Force on his way to take command. So then, just one of those funny things of fate, our good friend Bernard Montgomery, known as Monty to his troops, he became the commander of the Eighth Army. And he did meticulous planning and planned a brilliant offensive to crash through the Axis force and drive them out. And that takes us to where we're at now in the Dabbleverse, okay? All these dots right here, this chicken pox, this represents a large minefield. When the Axis were here at this spot, they did not have the strength to advance any further. They were low on men, low on tanks, low on fuel, but also you cannot retreat. So what they did is they dug in and made the best defenses possible, where now they can use this narrow strip of land to their advantage and hope to hold back the Allies. Now, I don't post videos very often. That's because I am a real dabbler. Like, I'm a dilettante at this stuff. I'm not a professional YouTuber or podcast or anything. This is just fun to make these goofy things, and I appreciate very much that people put them or like them. My point about that is, excuse me. My point about that is that represents myself, you, all of us. We dabblers are like the United States that at this point had now entered World War II and had already been helping the British, but now it's the floodgates have opened. So, kind of like when John did his bullshit lawsuit and Dr. Steve started the GoFundMe, Carl and Shuey are raking the money from all of us regular people. That's like the United States flooding the British now with supplies, aircraft, tanks, artillery, fuel, everything you need. So Montgomery is able to build up his forces and get immense strength to press an offensive. Now again, I mentioned this huge minefield here. This is hundreds of thousands of landmines, which was their best defense. The landmines represent the bullshit legal proceedings that both Aaron and John have against our major players right now. Of course, John has his lawsuit against Shuley and Carl. Aaron with his HRO against Patrick, which, real quick, remember that was the reason why I made my very first video. And I thought that would have been thrown out. I was completely wrong. I have never seen... Oh, excuse me. Sorry, that's rude, but I've never seen anything like that when I was a police officer. Now, granted, all the restraining orders I saw were legitimate. These were like battered women or people that have been really abused, not just some fag like Aaron. So maybe that's why. And also Minnesota's nuts. But the fact that that's still going on is insane. I don't know. I feel like maybe it's just going to expire unless Patrick's got something behind the scenes that we don't know about. That maybe the year's just going to go by. I mean, it doesn't affect their daily lives at all. So maybe that's why it hasn't been top priority. But it's insane that HRO is still in place as far as I know. But anyway, their legal proceedings represent this minefield because, again, these people, with Chad, Opie, Gino, all these fools, like this terrain where you have Rommel, this master tactician, who is a master of maneuver warfare. In this situation, you cannot maneuver. Now, he couldn't because he was so low on supplies, and again, the terrain would not allow it. They can't maneuver just because they're untalented. They don't know how to fight back in a funny, sophisticated, original way. So they use the law, abuse the law, I should say, to their advantage to fight back, and that represents this minefield. It makes a tough crust for our side to be able to punch through. Once you get through that, once those lawsuits are shattered, it's lights out in Georgia. It's going to be open season. But you have to get through this first. It's like the shell of a coconut. It's very, very hard. So that's really all they have going on right now with the bad guys, again, and the situation for December 2025. You see, they are largely supplemented by weak and ineffective forces. They don't have the ability to maneuver. They don't have any sort of grand plan. All they can do is sit and wait for the onslaught and hope to repel it, which, doesn't look good. Let me check my notes real quick. It's funny. With that, sorry, I can't repeat exactly what I wrote, but it's just to jog my memory. But now with this, I mentioned Kaylee before. I haven't watched it yet, but at the time of me filming this, she had just done a show with that woman, Judy, that old mama-san who John has been hitting on, which I don't understand at all. I mean, she's like a 70-year-old, Asian lady that is not attractive at all. I mean, if John is that desperate, you can find a better looking woman than that if you're lonely, but to each their own. But anyway, analyzing John's ridiculous lawsuit. If you haven't seen that, again, I haven't seen it yet, but go check it out. I'm sure it's very good. She does great legal analysis. But that Judy lady, so I really don't like her. But I won't get into politics and stuff right now. But when she has talked to John and she has explained to him, that he's stupid in a polite way, because John is stupid. Really, pretty much all these people are stupid to one extent. Other than Vince. Vince is very smart, which is why I fear him. But the rest of these folks, have got moderate to very, very low intelligence. But anyway, where was I at? Okay, sorry, the real life battle. Just so here's what's going to happen with the Dabbleverse, which parallels the real life battle. Up here in the north, Montgomery decided to attack with the Australians, the Scottish, and the New Zealand, and with the South Africans and Indians in support up here at the north, okay? Now, he knew that this was going to be tough because you got to get through this minefield, and then the Germans, again, relying on the Italians for the bulk, would rush in the few tanks they had to buttress this up and keep from a breakthrough, which is what happened in real life. So this was very heavy fighting for several days. The entire battle lasted about 12 days, but eventually, spoiler alert, the British win. I hope you should know that, but if not, these forces, they're bogged down here for a few days, but they're grinding up these Italian units, but also they're drawing in the German forces that are in the area. Then eventually here, this 21st Panzer, it had to go in too to hold. So now you see nearly all the Germans are concentrated up here. And again, as you can see by the map with these colors, the majority of the forces are Italian. So you have a few number of competent, better equipped German forces, and now they're all concentrated up here. So when that was going on, then they brought in these troops down here in the south to attack here, including the French and Greek support, and with the 7th Armored coming through to exploit a breakthrough. Now that all the Germans are concentrated up here, and this is held just by Italians. Now, to the credit of the Italians, they did fight well for a few days, but eventually, with a war of attrition, and Montgomery knew, look, I have way more men, way more tanks. There are about 200,000 British here, about 96,000 Axis forces, and again, probably 60% of those were Italian. So out of that, maybe 40,000 Germans versus 200,000 British Commonwealth forces. Not to discount the Italians entirely, but again, they were not very good in the Second World War. I don't want to be too mean, but, it is what it is. And again, eventually they were able to overcome this, just like how in real life, Aaron's HRO will be tossed eventually or just expire. And John's lawsuit, I don't think it'll be thrown out of court. I think what's going to happen is with John's lawsuit against Carl and Shuley, John, of course, is poor, and he can never, all of his stupid legal stuff, he never pays for a lawyer himself. Most likely, at least in my opinion, that Vince is pulling the strings on this. I think multiple people think that. Vince is probably very smart and covering his trail to make sure there's not any kind of direct connection to him orchestrating the lawyers John has. But they're not being paid, or Vince is paying them either in money or, since Vince is a lawyer, doing some kind of annoying legal work for them so they don't have to deal with it. But eventually, those lawyers will drop out because they're not getting anything out of this. They're just doing it for Vince, who's just doing this to make himself laugh because he loves fucking with John. And we love fucking with John too. It's fantastic. Especially if the venue gets changed to Rochester. I know they're in the process of trying to do that now. If that happens and John's lawyers who are based out of New York City, who again are not being paid and are just doing this as a favor to Vince, most likely, YouTube turns through all that bullshit, so nobody sues me, whatever you're supposed to say. I think they'll definitely drop out, and then it'll just fizzle itself out. If it doesn't, it could drag on for years. Civil proceedings, again, from police experience, I know a lot about criminal law. I don't know a whole lot about civil, but I can tell you that cops love civil law because whenever you show up to some place and people are fighting, they want somebody arrested, and you find out it's a civil issue, police get so excited because they can say, hey, this doesn't concern us. You need to go get a lawyer, go to a courthouse, and then we roll on, get out of there. Speaking of police, need to talk about Scarlet for a minute. Hopefully she is still alive, but that's not going to end well for that girl. But again, back as a police officer, I don't mean to joke, it's sad, but many times pulled girls like them, off of a sofa, face down after, probably be careful about what I say, but after what happens, and then, got to deal with the aftermath. But with her, and now we're going to get back to Keanu being the monster that she is, the situation with her, I think, clearly shows that Keanu is a liar and was never actually abused by that guy, whatever his name is, but the one she had arrested or filed a police report against. Because, again, we've seen Scarlet on camera multiple times. Now, in fairness, none of us are there. We don't know what happened before or after. We only see what we see on camera. So there could be more to the story that we're not aware of. But, again, from my training and experience, I'd say that girl's fucked. Not her job, but I mean in real life, fucked. So that will probably not end well. So I just wanted to mention her real quick. And that Keanu truly is a monster. She really has become the female Aaron Imholt. And it's worse when a woman does it because women are naturally more caring and nurturing than men. So when a woman acts like that, even if she's not any worse or even better than somebody like Aaron or John, it comes off as worse because as humans, even though people try to pretend about this stuff about gender and everything and all, the Ava stuff, men and women are different and we think differently. We act, we're wired differently. So for a woman to act the way she does is quite unusual. Which, speaking of Ava, I have to say, John, of course, is in love with Keanu, and these three seem to have like a devil's threesome going on, figuratively. Although I could see it actually happening in real life if it meant John could fuck Keanu. I think he would happily bring Ava into the situation to make that happen, which is gross, but, desperate people do desperate things. Sorry, it makes me shiver thinking about it. Also, it's cold. I'm in the mountains and it's December, so shiver for two things. Anyway. Oh, yeah, hit the like button if you like this. I have to say, bringing back Dean, is that I forgot about this a long time ago, but we surpassed Gary Biscayne a few videos back. But then Gino got his channel back, so now he's real Gino again. But before that happened, we beat Gary Biscayne a number of subscribers. Now, I don't like to push people to subscribe because I get annoyed. You probably do too when you watch a YouTube video and people are on your ass about subscribe, like, share, all that kind of stuff. And if you want to, that stuff's great. But my next goal now is I want to overtake Dean and become more powerful than his channel. And the Cabby Empire will continue to grow. But we can only do that with your help. So make sure to tell your friends. Hit the like button. That is always important. That's how I know, by the way, if people like this. Because I'm just goofing around doing this as a fun hobby. So if I see people give a little thumbs up or comments where people are engaging in what the topic is, that lets me know that at least somebody's watching this. And as long as a fair number of people do watch it and respond, I know somebody likes it, I'm happy to keep going. Originally, I wasn't planning on doing more, but since there was such a response, I was like, fuck it, I'll be goofy every once in a while. I can fit that in my schedule, even though I'm a busy guy, unlike lonely people like John and Aaron, and of course, Opie. One last thing. I'll try to wrap this up because, again, it's Christmas. You should be with your families. Forget all that Hanukkah bullshit and Kwanzaa. Christmas is the reason for the season. So go be with your families and enjoy Christmas tree and whatnot and presents, Santa Claus, Jesus, all the good things that this time of year brings. But that makes me think of Opie. You know, you probably noticed if you're a loyal Cabby viewer and you've seen all my videos, I have this reoccurring sympathy for Opie. He's not a good person really, but I just think of the hell that's going on in that guy's mind, and I have sympathy for him that I do not have for people like Gino, or Aaron, or John. And even though John is stupid and Keanu is very stupid, and Chad is stupid, um, I'm sorry, I'm rambling now, but just thinking about that is who is the stupidest person in the Dabbleverse? Um, John is hard to beat. Chad is functionally illiterate, but I think if he's sober and you explain things to him, I think he can process information versus John is just unable to process it. But Keanu is incredibly stupid and also very arrogant. So even though I said she's the female Aaron Infolt in terms of being evil, she's the female John in terms of stupidity. And I don't say any of that to be mean. I'm just saying these are clearly people you don't want doing your taxes or watching your kids if you go out to run errands or anything. Actually, on this whole list, I think, yeah, I got sympathy for Opie. I think Opie's the only guy on here, maybe Clay, that I would be willing to let watch my kids for like an hour. I mean, I would still vet him a little bit first, but Opie, I think, is the only person I would be confident this person wouldn't do something stupid where I come back and my kids are dead or anything crazy like that. But who knows? I mean, that'll never happen in real life, but it is interesting to think about. Let me check my my notes here real quick, and then I'll wrap up. Oh, I'm glad I did this. Okay, this is very important. Hopefully you're still watching. All right. John threatens people, pretends to be a tough guy. Here's what I want to happen. Contact your local, Dabbleverse representative. If you're, watching this and you're a Haley fan, talk to Haley. If you're watching this and you're a Melton fan, contact Melton. Contact Karmic if you're a Karmic fan. Tukey, Carl, Shuley, Blind Mike, so on and so on. Contact your Dabbleverse representative. Tell them we need to make this happen. Hackamania 3 sounds like it's going to be the event of the season. Apparently everybody's going. Which again is another thing where I said it's all merged into one big universe. Hackamania and DabbleCon seem to be one and the same now because all the same people show up. What we need to do is we need to have Moody physically fight John. And we need to make that happen by any means necessary. Alright, that's going to be important for two things. One, Moody doesn't really involve himself with John, so there's no bias. I mean, I'm sure he's heard things, but he doesn't have the disdain for John that most of us have. And then also, he's apparently a very small man. So it'll be extra funny to see somebody who might even be smaller than John whip John's ass. But then, this is the best part. Moody is from New Zealand, so we let that happen. Then I will pay the shipping freight. We'll put him in a box with air holes and, smuggle him out through FedEx or something. We get him back to New Zealand. He's safe, all right? The government, the police, nobody's going to extradite this guy from New Zealand back to the United States to face any kind of charges for assault or anything for this drunk loser. It's essentially the perfect crime. So do what you can. Talk to your Dabverse representatives. Try to make that happen. That would be fantastic. I think that's everything. Again, hit like, comment if you like it, subscribe if you want to. You don't have to. I like to push that on people. But if we can overtake Dean, that would be hilarious. Because he got like 100-something videos. I think this is my 9th video. So if we can beat him... no offense, Dean, you're, one of my heroes in Dabverse, but it would be funny. And then once we overtake Dean, then whoever's next on the list, we got to see. But, the Cabby Empire will continue to grow. We'll never be Carl. This guy's the biggest shark in the ocean, but it would be funny just as some guy fucking around in a spring house with arts and crafts with a handful of videos, beats Gino, Keanu, other people, that Shmuel Buckman guy. It would just be funny. I think that's everything. I was going to talk about Ashley Cummings real quick, but, we don't need to worry about that right now. Just go be with your family, enjoy the holidays, and if we reach our goal, goal, then I'll come back and we'll do another video sometime after New Year's. But in the meantime, enjoy this and enjoy the holidays. One last thing. Okay. I lied in my post. Sorry. My mind ran while I was forget. But... to Adam Davies is the guy who correctly guessed this was El Alamein. I don't really have a Hackamania coupon. If you're going to coupon, you could use promo code PASP or WATP. Those are real. They'll get you 10% off. If you would like a real prize, though, sir, send me your information, and I will give you an autographed copy of The South Was Right. This is one of my favorite books I've had since I was a teenager. And, as we just see how things change more and more each day with this country, you realize that the South was right. Okay, anyway, Merry Christmas, and I'll see everybody next time.